Welcome to myFace, myStory, voices from the craniofacial community, with your host, Dina Zuckerberg.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of myFace, myStory, voices from the craniofacial community. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, click subscribe now so that you'll never miss a future episode. And if you're a fan of myFace, myStory, rate and review the program on Apple Podcasts so we can get our message of inclusivity and empowerment to more people. I'm your host, Dina Zuckerberg, the Director of Family Programs at myFace. I was born with a cleft lip, a hearing loss, and no vision in my left eye. myFace, myStory is about people like us being seen and heard, about sharing stories within the craniofacial community and with others. For today's episode, I will be joined by Matthew Joffe, someone who I have known for over 20 years and who I admire. Matthew was born with Moebius Syndrome. He is currently the Director of Outreach and Education in the Wellness Center at LaGuardia College. Formerly the Senior Director of the Office for Student Guidance and Disabled Student Programs, he came to LaGuardia in August 1994. He has over 44 years of experience as an educational therapist, psychotherapist, and trainer. He has been nationally recognized as an expert in the field of learning disabilities and has had extensive experience training professionals in vocational rehabilitation, learning disabilities, traumatic brain injury, and chemical dependency. He is also a trainer in Question, Persuade, Refer, QPR, and Mental Health First Aid, MHFA, and MHFA 2.0. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Dina. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, and I look forward to our conversation. So, for those who don't know, can you share with us what the characteristics of Moebius syndrome are?
Well, Mobius Syndrome is a craniofacial condition that affects the 6th and 7th craniofacial nerve. I hope I got the numbers right. Primarily, which focus on the ability to smile and to close your mouth. There could be additional involvement in the eyes and in the ears. So there are the other craniofacial nerves that could be impacted. And it's a congenital disorder. So it's not something you acquire later in life. You're born with it. It's congenital.
And what was it like for you growing up?
Well, in my day, little was known about Mobius syndrome.
Right.
I'll be 70 next summer. My parents paraded me in front of as many doctors as they could, trying to find answers. Ultimately, I was tested for every known disorder, and when everything was negative, they said to my parents, by default, your child has Mobius syndrome.
Okay.
And so I used to go around going, it's a booby prize. I couldn't win any of the others, so this is what they gave me. And now, of course, inside of days, a parent can know whether or not their child has Mobius syndrome.
Right.
But, science marches on since my day.
And how rare is Moebius syndrome? Do you know?
It's very rare. It's registered as one of the rare disorders with the National Organization of Rare Disorders in, I believe, Connecticut, NORD. I think it's one out of every 100,000. I hope I'm getting the numbers right and doing my colleagues proud.
So what was school like for you growing up? And did you need special accommodations?
I did need some accommodations, primarily because of my limited eyesight. I'm blind in my right eye, and my left eye does as best as it can, but it's not going to take home any prizes. I'm incredibly myopic. I don't see things very far away. So I would sit in the front of the board so I could see what was being written on the board. And that was primarily the only accommodation. Plus, they realized that it would take me a little longer to go from room to room. Um, but the best accommodation I ever got was in sixth grade when my mother officially got me out of gym for the rest of my life. And so, not being very physically gifted, gym always seemed like a bad use of my time.
Right. Yeah,
So,
I would have liked that actually.
yeah,
I
my
never
mother
was a big
came up
fan.
on all that on her own. How was it like? I was teased. I had people
Mhm.
calling me names and ostracizing me from the rest of the crowd of peers. I tended to gravitate more to the teachers because they
Right.
were adult and I could relate to them without fear of any of the things that I was getting from kids my own age. And so it was typical in that sense, children and later adults, when they don't understand something they see, they either reject it or they make up some sort of script in their minds about what they're seeing. And
Right.
so I had my fair share of name calling and many a lonely afternoon at home without friends.
Yeah. I can relate to the idea of uh, latching on to the adults and the teachers, and
Hmm.
'cause I feel like I did that too when I was growing up. And
Yeah.
yeah, I remember doing that with my kindergarten teacher, second grade teacher. So I do remember that. So I remember your mom, speaking of your mom, and how she was such a strong force. And what kind of support did you have from your parents and your family?
Well, I was very lucky. I had parents that really believed in me. And I realized that that's not something that I can assume every child
Mm-hmm.
is fortunate to have. They were very different in their approaches. My father was more uh, the quiet person behind the scenes who would try to raise funds and awareness and pressure my doctors to look for solutions for me surgically. They spent many years looking for a pacemaker that would be implanted in my face that would basically allow me to open and close my mouth normally, or as normal as one could get.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the quiet unsung hero in terms of trying to support me, and he treated me normally,
Right.
and he always wanted me to do my best, and he instilled a very serious work ethic in me, and he basically taught me how to dress,
Right.
in terms of dressing for success. My
Right.
mother was more outspoken,
Right.
and you've met my mother, so you
I
know what she
do.
was
I
like.
remember. Yeah.
She would go every year at the beginning of the school year, speak to the principal, and make sure that the teachers chosen were the best for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she had the first of the many PTA conferences, but they usually had at least two a year, she would go up to them and literally say, "I'm Matthew Joffe's mother. Do you have any questions?" Just
Right.
like that, in their face. And she would make sure that everything was going according to plan and that I was getting what I needed in school. And both of my parents uh, took me out in the world. They didn't hide me. I went to
Right.
the theater. I went to restaurants. They protected me from onlookers.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, when I was very young, they spoke for me. But I learned by watching that I could learn to speak for myself as well. And so they were always helping me to remember that the bad incidents that I would come home crying over were more about the other person and not something I did.
Right.
So I never felt responsible. And that was very important for my development,
Right.
my sense of who I was.
Did you ever have teachers or the school did you ever feel like they made assumptions because you look different? And it sounds like your parents made sure that that wasn't going to happen, that they weren't going
Um,
to do that.
it did twice that I
Mhm.
remember. Once when I was in sixth grade, and I believe that the instructor was removed like in mid-year. So
Okay.
clearly there were other issues other than just me that they were concerned about. So he was gone, and we got somebody new. But when I was in 11th grade, I got the most popular teacher in chemistry.
Right.
But a guidance counselor and my mother, I guess, spoke, and he called me down one day and said, "I'm transferring you." I said, "Okay, why?" "Well, the teacher you have isn't the most flexible,
Mhm.
and we want to make sure you get someone who understands your needs and is patient and will help you." I said, "Sounds like a plan." And so they moved me out into another class, which was terrific.
Right.
So I did have that, but not a lot, actually.
Right.
Not a lot. I was lucky that way. And it never happened in college.
Right. Well, I say bravo to your parents for making sure that you always knew that you could accomplish and do anything you wanted. And
Yes,
yeah,
yes. Thank you. I agree.
yeah.
Yes. They were the driving spirit behind it.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel the same about my parents. They always, despite all the challenges I had, they always led me to believe I could do anything I wanted, and I think that really
Hmm.
does go a long way.
It does.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And we're lucky. We're the lucky
yeah,
ones.
yeah. Because it doesn't always work out that way, I think, but
No, no. I
yeah,
think we both have had our share of sad stories over
yes,
the years.
yes. So, as an adult now, do you experience social challenges as a result of your differences, you feel, from
Oh,
others?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I live in New York, and I've lived in New York my entire life. I'm what they call a die-hard New Yorker.
Mhm.
And I see the looks people give me walking down the street. I remember very clearly when I was a graduate student at the Teachers College, Columbia University, they had very wide sidewalks. I was walking north, and coming towards me on the south side of the block was a young parent and about maybe 4 or 5 year old child. And as he's getting closer, I noticed his eyes were getting wider
Mm,
as he was looking at me. And he took his hand and sort of stretched it out sideways, so his body looking to connect with me.
okay.
And the mother was very tall and thin and had beady eyes that looked like lasers. And just about the time we would have crossed paths, she yanked her child away from me and kept on going past me. And I was very upset.
Mm,
And I turned around and I started clapping. And I yelled out and I said, "Congratulations, lady. Your son is going to grow up just like you."
right.
And I kept walking
Well,
because it
'cause
really bothered me.
yeah,
You
they
know, it
mirror,
really,
right? They mirror what their parents, how their parents react or how they
exactly.
exact.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because when they're that young, that's all they know is what their parents say or do. And
yeah,
so it still happens, not as frequently, fortunately,
right.
um, but I know it's out there. I know it's out there.
Yeah. Which why I think education is so important when we can to educate people. Because I think so much of it is right when they've not been exposed to, they don't know or they've never seen it before.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
My whole life has been, don't be afraid to ask me a question
right,
because it's the only way you're going to learn, and there's a good chance you'll teach me something too,
right.
and it's a
That's
win-win. So yes, to me education one by one is everything.
Absolutely. So we actually have a comment from Ophelia, and you'll appreciate this. She says, I met Matthew like 10 years ago. He's a great person. I met him at college. So,
That's right. Hi,
yeah,
Ophelia. Glad
yeah,
you're on.
yeah. And we have
Thank you.
a comment from David. We're lucky to be in the same community as Matthew Joffe. So, and
Oh,
I agree
wow.
100%.
Well,
So,
thank you. Thank you all.
and we have from Sandra saying, bravo, excellent answer. She liked what you just said.
Thank you.
So you and I, Matthew, met when we both joined the support group for teens and adults with craniofacial differences, the interfaces, around, I think it's almost 30 years ago.
Yeah,
Can you talk
1990.
about that and what it was like for you?
Sure. Um, it's kind of a funny story. My mother was determined that I meet other people like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And behind my back, she wrote to about a half a dozen places, Adult Face, Life Face, and a whole bunch of others. And she got a response from someone in not, the former MyFace that was at NYU. And I went to this first meeting. I remember very clearly January 27th, 1994. It was a Saturday and it was a blizzard.
Mm,
And I walked in to the house that was hosting
right,
it and found out that you all were working on a play and you were planning on going on stage.
right.
And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, how do I get out of here?
I
I
felt
was,
the same way, by the way. I
I
think
was,
we joined similar times. Yeah.
yeah, I was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the other people in the group, Heather,
Right.
came up to me and said she thought I was really brave coming and staying instead of sticking it out. And her words really resonated, and I kept coming back and
Right.
was in it for the long haul. It was finding a family
Right.
of people to relate to without having to go through the whole description and song and dance. There was something unspoken between people in this
Right.
group, and it was really an eye opener. And it also was very transforming.
Yeah. It really
And
was.
yeah, it was magical
Yeah.
in the most profound way.
Yeah. And it's hard to recreate that, I feel like. But because that really was an amazing time, I think, for both of us.
Yes, yeah.
So we, as you said, we wrote and performed in a show called Let's Face the Music
Hmm.
that I know changed my life, and I think it did for you. So what was that
Yes.
experience like for you?
Um, I remember very clearly the power I experienced in being on stage and being in control of my own vulnerability. So I let them in, them being the audience, and
Mm-hmm.
I was the one that showed my vulnerability to them, as opposed to the teasing, the name calling, and other horrible experiences that we've all gone through.
Right.
And so it was tremendously empowering and very emotional. And I've often said I walked in and onto the stage as one person and
Mm-hmm.
walked off the stage forever changed to another person. And
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was life defining because I've never done that before. I was much more focused on protecting myself and hiding
Right.
emotions and not letting people in general. I mean, by then I had some friends, but I've always been one for a tight circle of friends as opposed to
Hmm.
having a whole, Colosseum's worth. Uh, and so it taught me a lot of life lessons. So
Yeah.
it was one of the most important things I've ever done in my life.
I agree with you. I still remember I still remember the words, but when we did the finale and you and Elizabeth opened the finale, and when we say, I
Yes.
know it's time I sing this song from deep inside, I've tried so long to let you come closer and see the person inside I call me. I don't remember the rest of it, but it was such a powerful song. And sang it so, you and Elizabeth sang it so beautifully.
Oh,
So,
well, thank you.
yeah.
Because a very quick funny story.
Mm-hmm.
I get a phone call from Jody and Bruce
Right.
on a Sunday, and they're driving in their convertible upstate.
Right.
And Jody and I can tell the wind is behind the phone. And Jody says, "Congratulations." I said, "Yes."
Right.
And she said, "You've got the lead singing role for the show." And I literally said, "Are you nuts? Have
Right.
you heard me sing? I only sing in the shower." And she said, "You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. We got people here to help you." And I said, "Okay," which again taught me an interesting lesson, which I held on to, and that is don't dismiss how other people perceive you
Right.
just because they see you differently than you see yourself.
Right.
And that often their perception of me is more accurate than my own. And
Absolutely.
so I
So
opened the
true.
doors to that. And I remember that as being a very obvious and clear example of, of learning that, from someone else. It was a gift
Right.
in a lot of ways. So,
Yeah. I also remember how powerful we did the Max scene. And then so we wore one
yeah,
mask that we had created, then we put on a white mask, and then we removed the mask. And the power of that was
yes,
so amazing.
it was. It was. And I think it was as powerful for us as it was for the audience.
Yeah.
Um, because we had never processed ourselves in that way.
Right.
And um, it's a kind of rebirth taking off both the mask we made and the white mask and
Right.
revealing our true selves.
Right.
And that was one of the most powerful moments in the whole play
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. And I think in some ways we all wear masks, right? And especially it's interesting with the whole pandemic and how we all were wearing masks and almost on an even playing field. And now we're taking the mask off again. Some are putting it back on, but most of us are taking it off. So, yeah.
I
So,
believe it or not, as much as I loathe the masks,
mm-hmm.
because with my disability, I struggle to breathe with a mask
Right.
on. It also is a safety net because I walk into a public space and no one knows about my craniofacial condition.
Right.
They don't really focus on my eye and they can't see my face. They see me with a walker, but that could be a million and one explanations. So it's got its pros and its cons.
Right.
So
So we actually have a comment from Yael. This is my son's account. It's Yael. Thanks. This is great. Thank you, Dina and Matthew. And then we have another comment from Sandra. Great quote. Don't let other people's perceptions of you. Please say it again. She's asking if you can say the quote again.
oh, um,
Remember.
don't dismiss other people's perceptions of you just because they're different from your own, because often their perception of me, in my case, was more accurate than my own perception. And so they encouraged me to take a leap and to stretch myself and to allow them to sort of be my safety net in trying something new. So that's something I've held on to ever
Mhm.
since.
And then we have a comment from David. Brilliant insights about being a performer, Matthew.
Oh,
So,
thank you, David.
are you still acting today? Have you done
I
any?
am. I am. I've done a number of things. I did in several documentaries, some of them international, and I've done several plays. I was in a play called Wheelchair, which had a one night reading, and I only discovered maybe 6 weeks ago that there was a private recording of it, which
Oh,
I now
wow.
have, so I can finally watch it because it's very different when you're in it.
Yeah.
You're not focused on anything but getting through the play. I did a play in the pandemic. Uh, we got the play script on. They wrote it Monday, gave it to
Uh-huh.
us Tuesday. We rehearsed Wednesday. I think they shot it Thursday during the day and showed
Wow.
it at night. It was wild, but
Wow.
lots of fun.
Mm,
So I've done several plays. I most recently did a revival of Inside Out, Voices from the Disability Community, uh, with the Ping Chong Company,
right.
and I was so glad to see you there. And
Yeah.
it was held at Lincoln Center as part of their Summerfest in August, and it was similar to what we had done with
Right.
Let's Face the Music, uh, in doing, Where Are They Now 10 years later, or a little more than that. And so it was great to see the whole team together again and to update the script to represent where we are in our lives.
Right.
And it was an incredibly powerful day.
Yeah.
I mean, you rehearse for a week and you do it and it's gone. But it left its mark in a very positive way. And
Yeah.
I'm always looking for more work. I love acting. It allows me to be myself and to show others that you shouldn't let yourself be held back, especially on your own. And that if there are people who believe in you, then you should take the leap
Right.
and do it.
Right.
So uh, I'm hoping to get more acting in the future.
Well, I look forward to seeing you perform in the future. I actually got to see the show at Lincoln Center, and I got to see it when you had originally done it, performed in it all those years ago. So it was fun to
Yes,
see the updated version after all these years.
wonderful. Thank you.
So one of the things I've always loved about you is your sense of humor. How has that helped you in your life, Matthew?
Oh my goodness. Um, I think it's the most important thing that I have as a tool for living. If you can't laugh at the world and at yourself, then where are you? I don't have a center. I don't feel grounded.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are things in the world that are absolute lunacy, and I think that things are sometimes absurd. And to laugh at it is to sort of acknowledge what it is
Mm-hmm.
and to figure out a way to live with it at the same time. And I remember I've only met two people in my life who did not have a sense of humor,
Right.
and I couldn't talk to them.
Mm,
I struggled severely, not just to have a conversation, but I realized in one instance there was no way to have a relationship.
right.
And so it never materialized. But it's everything to me. And nothing makes me happier than a good joke or a comedy on Broadway.
Right.
Um, I remember I went to see the one woman show with Carrie Fisher a number of
Mm-hmm.
years
I
ago,
remember that.
and I thought it was hysterical, and I laughed and laughed and laughed. And afterwards, a couple came up to me and said, "We just want to tell you how much we enjoyed your laughter."
Mm.
They said it was so real and genuine. He said, "We listened to other people in the audience and we felt it was contrived
Mm.
or
Interesting.
censored." He said, "Your laughter is real from the gut." And I think that's one of the nicest things a total stranger has ever said to me.
I love that.
And it was
Uh,
pre-mask, so they saw me in all of
mhm.
my glory, and it didn't matter. And I walked out of that theater, I think, 10 feet off the ground.
I love that. Well, you've certainly made me laugh a lot over the years, and
Oh, thank you.
so especially you and Dean and that dynamic too.
Oh, yes,
A
yes.
lot of laughs over the years. So we actually have a question from Elise, and she's asking, do you feel your identity is based largely on your differences, or do you see yourself as a performer, an academic, etc.? She says, I have a facial difference, but I don't think about it often. It's a great question.
Um, it is. Do I see myself? Can you read it again?
Yes. So
The
do
first
you
part?
feel, yeah, so do you feel your identity is based largely on your differences, or do you see yourself as a performer, an academic, etc.? So I guess do you see yourself first as those?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, in all honesty, when I was growing up, I never thought about being an academic or being a performer. I just simply wanted to have friends and to live, whatever living meant when you were 12 or 8. As an adult, and I chose a career path, um, my father stepped in. And
Mm,
my father said, "You need to do something that's going to work for you and be practical." And I had originally wanted a college job as a professor in a very
mm,
specialized field. There are only maybe half a dozen spots in the United States.
well,
And he just felt it's too high risk. You
mm-hmm,
need something that you can be successful in and that there is options and possibilities. So his influence was significant. And I chose the path I'm in, which is special education, therapy, and personal development. So that came later. I don't feel as if, as a child or even an adolescent or young adult, I don't think I had a clue yet. I was working on it,
mm-hmm,
but it wasn't fully formed. Today, I think it's all meshed together.
mm,
I think that my differences certainly have shaped who I am, and I've spent a number of years in my own therapy working on those things that I wanted to change. And I've also incorporated this love of acting that, I got involved with without consciously seeking it, because probably I would never do it if it was all left to my own devices. And the academic part was after my first job ended, when I got wind of a job possibility at the college.
right.
So at this point, I'm both. I really am an academic and an actor, and I am someone who is an educator who strongly is committed to enlightening the world one person at a time about what it means to live with a facial difference.
Mm,
That's the real cause for me. If I can use my teaching at school, my acting on stage together to get the word out, even by just showing up and someone saying, "Gee, he looks different, but he's got a job at the college. If he can do it, I can do it." Well,
Right.
then I feel like I've already got my foot inside the door. And so right now, they're all actively part of who I am.
Right.
That's a long answer to your question. I
It's
hope
a,
it helps.
it's a great answer. So did you face obstacles when you were looking for jobs or interviewing? And do you think
Yeah.
things are getting better now than they were when you were interviewing?
Oh wow! I haven't interviewed for a job in ages.
A long time, right?
And I don't know if you realize this, Dina, but I've only had two jobs in my whole life.
Well, I
And
had to,
so
yeah.
my first job was 16 and a half years, and this is year 28 at LaGuardia.
Wow.
So I tend to stick around if I like something.
Right, right.
So I I remember, however, when I first started out after graduate school, looking for jobs, including working in a school district, I went all the way out to the south of Jersey. Took a bus 2.5 hours each way. It was in the summer. I was wearing a seersucker suit and sweating like a cow. And I remember sitting in the main area, and the assistant principal was on the opposite side of the stage. He came out of his office, and I met him halfway in the middle of the room. And I, lifted my head up and stuck out my hand to shake his hand. And his eyes met mine, and he turned white as a ghost
Wow.
and gave me the limpest, clammiest handshake I have ever experienced. And right then and there, I knew I did not have the job.
Right.
I met with him. He protected himself on a lawsuit and spent 20 minutes with me. And I just knew
Right.
this wasn't going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I had another job, possibility up in upstate New York, not all the way up, but I think not Orange County, but somewhere north. And the principal was very gung ho for me to take the job, but ultimately he bowed to pressure, I guess, of his board of advisors. And I don't really know what the true story was behind me not getting the position, but I always felt a little suspicious. Whether or not things have changed, I want to say I hope so, but I don't have any firsthand experience.
Right.
I think what's most important is whoever it is that's seeking a job to have guidance and support in learning how to dress for success, how to sell yourself, how to be upfront with who you are as a person, so that they can see who you really are and say yes to the person sitting across from them. But that's an ideal scenario.
Right.
I don't know if people have improved, judging from the latest political climate we're experiencing. I'm a bit suspicious.
Right. I remember years ago, when we first met, we did workshops on finding a job, interviewing,
Yes.
and I remember how I think that was really helpful for a lot, because I think all the things you just said are really helpful when going out for interviews. And I think a lot of the people in the group had very shared feelings about how they were perceived when they were interviewing for jobs. So
Yes.
I,
Yes.
like you, hope that it has gotten better. I'm not always so sure it has, but I think at least it seems like there's more awareness today than and the things that you can and can't say now.
Right.
I think, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I hope you're right. I really do.
I hope so too. So two more questions for you.
Sure.
How can parents best support their child living with a facial difference? in your opinion?
The first thing that pops into my head is be there for your child 24/7, no matter what the issue is. They, they need you on all sorts of levels for support. But also, you need to be willing to ask for help and reach out to communities that share this condition, perhaps, like I did with Moebius Syndrome, um, and we did with, joining and being involved in the play,
Mm-hmm.
and also listening to your child and reading between the lines and understanding what are the feelings behind what they're telling me in words.
Right.
Are they scared? Are they nervous? What's going on with my child so that developmentally you can be with them as they get older and believe in them. Because if you don't believe in them, they're not going to believe in themselves.
So true.
And it's going to get harder as you get
Mm-hmm.
older. And as a parent, you have to be willing to shed guilt and a feeling ashamed. You're not responsible for your child's disability.
Right.
And that's a big deal for some parents. What did I do to deserve this?
Right.
And that's just not part of the equation. It's this is my child. What do I do to support that child and help him develop in the world? So that's what I want parents to do, and to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
For older people who've been there, done that. And my mother would go to the Mobius Syndrome conferences. And in her own way, not surprisingly, she was a magnet for other parents.
Right.
They would talk to her and ask her, what did she do to raise me?
Right.
And it was all instinctual because of the timing that I was born. She did things instinctually no one told her to do.
Right.
And so that's still needed. People that are isolated geographically need to reach out and use the internet.
Right.
And even if it's on Zoom or even it's a phone call, you know, to quote Verizon, reach out and touch someone
Right.
and hear from some other people what they've gone through, because then you're
Right.
not alone anymore.
Right. I always say there's power in the shared story and knowing you're not alone. And I think it's really true.
Absolutely.
And what you also said, I think is sometimes it's just as powerful as what a child doesn't say as what they do say. And I think, like you said, it's reading between the lines and really questioning maybe what they're saying and inquiring more if your gut is saying there's something going on. I think
Exactly.
is important.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
my last question for you, Matthew, is knowing what you know now, what is one thing you would tell your younger self, if there's anything?
Oh, there's lots. There's lots. Um, 2020 hindsight's a really interesting thing.
Right?
Um, I think the most important thing I would tell myself is to be to be brave and not be fearful of rejection.
Right.
To not personalize it so deeply that it prevents you from moving forward.
Right.
I think looking back at my life, that is something I would like to have changed. And like everything else, it was part of my experience growing up. I got certain messages from a variety of places, And that's what was formed. Looking back and having the power to change it, that might be, I think, the number one contender, to be less afraid and to take more risks so that you have more experiences in life and you fulfill your own aspirations and dreams so that you feel even more like someone next door to you, so to speak.
Right.
You know, not feeling as if, well, I can't have that.
Right.
You know, we can all have what we want if we have
Hmm.
the means to go after it.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great moment to end our conversation. And I knew I was going to enjoy this, and I have really enjoyed having you share your journey with us. And we go back a lot of years, and so thank you. And I feel blessed to know you all these years and be inspired by all you have accomplished, Matthew. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dina. It was a real honor to be a part of your series and to work with you. It
Thank
was a
you.
real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. So everyone has a story, and I am hopeful that by sharing stories like yours, we can help create a kinder world. Thank you again. Our community is lucky to have such an incredible advocate like yourself. For more than 70 years, myFace has been dedicated to changing the faces and transforming the lives of children and adults with facial differences by providing access to holistic comprehensive care, education, resources, and support that pave the way for better outcomes. To learn more, please visit myface.org. If you would like to learn more about the myFace support groups so that you can connect with others in the craniofacial community, please visit myface.org/online-groups. In 2023, myFace, myStory will be even easier for you to enjoy. Be sure to subscribe to myFace, myStory on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube to get notified of our next episode. If you'd like to receive email reminders of new episodes, sign up at myface.org/mystory. That's myface.org/mystory. Thank you for joining us for this episode of myFace, myStory. That's it for today's episode of myFace, myStory. But remember, it takes courage to share your story. So be brave and speak out.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Paul, the Executive Director of myFace. myFace is a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing the faces and transforming the lives of children and adults with facial differences. We do this through various programs and events such as the Transforming Lives educational webinar series, Races for Faces, the Wonder Project, and the groundbreaking myFace, myStory conversational series. You can learn more about all of these on our website at myface.org. If you enjoyed today's program, we hope you'll consider making a donation to help keep programs like this possible, as well as to further the support of the craniofacial community. Thank you.